Hey.
Hey.
What's up, everybody? Ed,
Yes.
Mike, how y'all doing?
We're doing good.
I just had another coughing fit.
Yeah?
I brought a cold home from Florida.
Oh, yeah?
You know how hot it was in Florida? My
I know.
toenails were sweating. That's how hot it was. When I got home, I walked out of the airport terminal. It was 64 degrees, and I was cold. So it felt good.
Did you play some golf in Florida?
I did not get an opportunity this time. Went to a Halloween party. Guess what I was dressed as? A garden gnome. Yes, a garden gnome. I had to do a class Tuesday while I was down there, so I have my own bedroom at my kid's place. I wore a gnome hat for part of it and Mickey ears for a while. And I'm sure the people are like, what is this guy doing? But
was this an event at Disney World you went to?
Yeah. They have the Halloween party at the Magic Kingdom.
Okay, cool. Now it's making sense. I'm sitting there thinking, like, why are you dressed up for Halloween?
I shouldn't have told you that part. I just should have left it open-ended.
I was thinking, I don't know what kind of party you're attending, man, but I'll let you do you.
Yeah, I was a good gnome, man, as you can imagine.
We have plenty of gnomes in Minnesota.
So, yeah.
Yes,
Mike, I want to bring the audience up to speed, man, who's going to watch this. Can you tell us about yourself? I know you're in Minnesota. You're close to TEC headquarters. Right. But tell the audience, man, why are you here and, like, what's your background?
Well, I've been in the trade school graduate back in 81. Spent basically half my career self-employed as a specialty HVAC contractor that did more air quality and more moisture stuff than furnace. Been working on low energy homes forever, but really heavy, combine the traditional HVAC skills with traditional blower door, duct blaster, a lot of backdrafting, so building pressure. And we have a lot of potential for a lot of moisture problems because it gets cold here in the winter time. And currently work for a distributor as a TSA technical service advisor for a number of lines, and also work as an adjunct instructor at one of the technical colleges locally here.
Gotcha. So, Mike, you've been around TEC a lot, from what I hear. I've learned that. So, just to let everybody know, Mike came to my first Train the Trainer session for the HVAC side. Really happy that you showed up. Brought a lot of knowledge to my class. I've been actually inputting a lot of that data into my class.
Thank you.
But you've got a lot of experience in how to find some weird problems. I guess that's the best way I can put it, right?
Yeah. We're using those in the field this morning, in fact.
Yep. Mike's that guy you bring to class, and he goes, "No, that's not exactly right." You need to change this.
I was everybody knows one of those. And then I said, "No, we're gonna have a conversation here."
Yeah. He's like, "Chris, I don't really like that slide. I'm gonna get with you after class."
Yeah.
So Mike, why don't you tell the people who are watching about what you told me, and then I want to show a video clip about what that's all about.
So, been doing duct blast or duct leakage tests probably since the 90s as diagnostic testing for pressure, moisture, mold, IAQ problems, and energy performance, obviously, for why the cooling or heating system is not working. Paint failures on exterior walls. So really have done a lot of that historically. And in 2015, our energy code, with some conversation in mechanical code, said if you put ductwork in an unconditioned area particularly in an attic or in a wall cavity, you shall test it. And so then we have to mastic or seal everything, which we've had in the code, Minnesota code, since 2000. But in 2015, it said you had to test and verify. So I did a lot of training on that with contractors as far as how to do that, how to pass the test. But I go out and do that test on a fairly regular basis. The new construction community, Ed and Chris, have you heard of AeroSeal?
Sure.
Yeah. So we have a lot of contractors on the bigger houses will AeroSeal their ductwork because the ductwork's required to be sealed. And a lot of the stuff I test will be on remodels or older houses, smaller, 1.5 ton up to 3 ton, maybe 4 ton systems. That the ductwork is in a walk-up attic or a fully insulated attic. And I've had to develop methods of air sealing. And Chris and Ed, I don't know how much of the group is do duct leakage testing now, or is it kind of guys that are interested in it? What?
Here's how I would sum up duct leakage testing from my experience. If it's mandated that you get certification to move into your house, then it's required and it gets done, or it gets pencil whipped. I think there's a niche part of the group that of the world that does do it because they understand the importance of it. Then I think there's a ton of people who don't give duct leakage the respect it deserves of how it impacts the house. And I think it's that part of lack of understanding is the only reason they don't do it. I don't think people don't want to do it. As tradesmen, we don't want to do what we feel is not important, right? We don't like busy work. And so if you're going to tell me, we got to go do this, we got to test it, and in your mind you're thinking, well, if I'm losing 150 CFM, what's that mean? Until you really get granular and you break it down to where it's like, how important is this? That's when I think the industry is going to drive to doing it more and more and more. What do you think, Ed?
I couldn't disagree with anything you just said. The people that are
you could disagree with the word I couldn't say, right?
Granular? I don't even know what that means. I was Googling that as soon as you said it. So I'm used to that. I try and surround myself with people who use words that I don't know and I have to look up. And then every once in a while I try and use one. And I'll purposely use one that's not proper. And then that's even more fun. But I think if more people got burnt quicker, then we would have more people wanting to do duct testing. But people don't get burnt because people oversize the beep out of stuff. And when you have a lot of duct leakage, it can get masked in a lot of instances. But to Mike's point, you can create the whole IAQ nightmares by having a significant amount of duct leakage and try and making up for the deficiencies with capacity. And that's never going to be a good thing. I would like to think that for the right reasons, people will start to do proper sizing, selection, commissioning, but I don't think it's going to happen because we work in too competitive of an industry. We have too many people out there that are really good at sales and nothing else. And when they talk to a homeowner, they can convince them that that 4 ton is better than the 3 ton, where the 3 ton is more than adequate. They just got to fix the ductwork, but they're not going to fix the ductwork. They're going to pay somebody to put the 4 ton in. And that's the sad reality of the industry we work in a lot of markets. So,
yeah, I would agree with that. And then one other thing, being involved with the trade schools and distributor training from the different factories, we're really trained as technicians to look at what the box is doing, what's the temperature difference, the delta T going across the evaporator, maybe looking at static pressure. And I don't want to get into that because that's a long seminar. I'll be too long on that. But what my point is if you're getting a good temperature across the system, but you're really not measuring the temperature or the flow at your supply, whatever that might be, if the supply is proper, that's where we're missing the boat. And by doing some basic airflow testing, duct blast test, then you can isolate what branch or what trunk you're having the leakage in. And Ed, I think you hit it right on the nail, that we don't have enough pain points or issues until we have bulk water leakage or mold. And we're covering lots of different climates here. In my zone, when I have duct leakage, I have frost or ice or water in my ductwork. And but in warm climates, what kind of problems do you see? And you too, Ed, you got plenty of humidity where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of situations do you guys run into?
I love seeing it when the ductwork drips and somebody calls and says that they have ductwork in their attic and the water's dripping off of it. What do I do? And I tell them, well, you want the easiest solution? They're like, yeah. I'm like, well, turn it off. It'll stop dripping. And they're not happy with that answer. And then you start from the very beginning. And I enjoy helping people, but I enjoy torturing them as I help them, because I won't just flat out tell them what's wrong. I'll ask them a series of questions so that they eventually answer the question themselves. And then they kind of get annoyed because they realize that it's a scenario where they could have avoided the problem to begin with if they would have just followed the rules per se. And that's making sure you got proper airflow, you got a proper sized piece of equipment. All these problems won't exist if somebody does a little bit of work up front to do a proper design and install something and commission it. So I would be lying if I said anything other than especially if it's somebody I kind of know. I'm putting them through the ringer. I want them to be squirming in their seat, and I'm going to make fun of them. So it's the way it works.
Right. And the one other thing with the last 2 or 3 years with COVID that people are starting to pay attention to is, when you have an open return in your attic, or you just got some open ductwork, and I know how the industry is, just run that fan all the time, and you're sucking particulates in from the attic as well as humidity or temperature. You got everything from bat, mice, insulation that we really don't want. And when you see that on the back side of your supply grills, then that really opens you up for some bigger legal conversation, which I've been involved with before. And, attics or crawl spaces aren't necessarily fun places to work in. But the whole thing is, if we don't have some basic testing or verification, just adding another ton of air to the system to fix the problem is not correct. And that's with the advent of heat pumps and inverter technology, which we all, I would assume, are working with. That's more of a modulating cruise control rather than come on come on at one big speed. And there's plenty of that equipment out there, I'm sure, also. But Chris, do you kind of want me to go into a little bit of kind of some of my methodologies as far as finding leakage?
I think so. Or I'll tell you what, why don't we play this video clip
Okay.
and then I want to let you get into it.
All right.
How about that? All right.
So-
Then we'll go into what this is all about because that's where this is headed. All right. Here we go.
We're out here playing a little backyard ball, and we're going to try to find out if we can find the duct leakage in this setup behind me with this DG8 micro manometer. Here's what I'll tell you. I'll go ahead and give you a little secret. One of those collars, out of the 2 branch runs I have behind me, one of them's not sealed very well. The idea is, can we find out which one just with pascals of pressure? Okay, let's do 50 pascals and see what happens.
So which one of these takeoffs do you think is leaking? Well, if you would have guessed takeoff number 2, you'd be correct. All right, Mike. So I talked with Mike. Me and Mike put together this little idea, and I put this test together up under the carport. And you notice that collar, the last collar, was like I just put 2 screws in it, didn't tape it, didn't do anything. And what I thought was really interesting, because I haven't tried this method before, I didn't even put the vapor jacket. I put it down, but I didn't put a zip tie. I didn't tape that jacket to the other jacket when they hit perpendicular, right? So they were touching, but they weren't touching and taped real tight. But I was still able to take my pressure measurements, and it did increase as it got to the end, which I thought was interesting. So,
yeah, I've done a lot of this testing over the years. Most of it with a duct blaster setup, but also with ventilation systems, both what we call exhaust only bath fans and HRVs or ERVs, because if you're dealing with normal flexible duct, you obviously have the duct, the inner liner, the fiberglass, and then you have the jacket. Well, if what Chris showed, and that's exactly how it works out in the field. If you have lots of trunks or lots of takeoffs, branches, and you need to say you have some moisture problems, like Ed said, water dripping out of the ductwork, then you could run the air handler and try to find that. What you should be doing is doing a full-blown duct blast test, because then you can find it quicker. But if you take your digital manometer, and you're not going to do it with just a regular magnehelic or a lower pressure. You have to have a better manometer that sees that kind of fine resolution on the pascals. And then you put your pressure tip where you suspect, because on a common job for when I'm doing duct glass, I might have 5, 6, 8 supply runouts, and the ductwork flex looks beautiful. And I get out my utility knife, and that's the video that I showed Chris and the guys at the conservatory of cutting a hole, and it saves you the time of removing all the insulation, and then you can pinpoint where the major leaks are. And is it a trunk? Is it a takeoff? Is it a collar? Is it elbows? Because then what will happen is that flex will pressurize, and if it's cold, then it will condense in there. Well, if I'm blowing 50-degree air in there, and the insulation isn't buried, or depending on now in your guys' area, are you using R4 or R8 on your flex duct? What's okay? So
I would say I'm
8.
6 and 8. I think it's a mixture of both in my area.
Okay, here, and I know that's code and that's standard, but here's what I tell technicians after I hand them a bill of diagnosing some of this stuff. I said, how does R8 work when it's minus 20 or 30 degrees below, and that's Fahrenheit, or if it's 180 degrees? How does R8 work for you? Do I have any heat loss or heat gain? So that's a question I want you guys to walk away with tonight. Why is my last supply blowing, 75, 80 degree air when my air handler is putting out 55? So, but doing that methodology of finding the leaks is really a quick way of kind of forensically, or a triage method of finding the leaks quicker, and then you can start fixing things.
So, Mike, I got to ask you a question about this. I have my thoughts on how I would use this down south, right? But up north, I guess what I'm trying to do is like give people who are watching this like an understanding of how you would deploy this and when you would deploy this. Like in the north, when it gets cold, I imagine we talked about this a little bit, but duct leakage may lead to some of that air hitting the roof line, and then you get condensation and it freezes, right? So you may have some signs of that even on the house, and then which makes you want to deploy this test. Or like, what's your first cue signs of saying, oh, here we go, bam, bam, bam? Like, so, when do you pull this method out of your bag?
So if I'm going to a house, it has a comfort problem, or if it's a moisture problem, window condensation, or to your point, if I have an ice dam situation or I have a odd melting pattern, then I can have localized air leakage. So this is an older house. Maybe somebody's been up there, put a new air handler in, in the last 10 years, and they notice, because they're using it for heating, the ductwork for heating, and I have a stack effect problem or air leakage. What we call in the building science is a bypass. If you have leaky ductwork and you have an open grill, that's just a bypass. That's an air bypass, like a can light or pot light, whatever you want to call it. And then that transports through there. Well, as the warm, moist air from the house transports through the ductwork, it'll condense in the ductwork a lot of times, because if it's tin, it's going to condense on that surface, go through the ductwork, and then I might have a localized problem. So that's kind of a energy moisture related problem. If it's an air quality problem, particulates, odors, smells, And then I ask, is there ductwork outside of the building or in the attic or in the walls? Then that's when I would proceed with the test. Really, the third thing is when you start having some paint failures or frost patterns on the side of your house or in certain rim joist areas where I'm pressurizing a zone or an area, and then I will pressurize an area, then that's when I also do the test. So these would be not code requested. This is more building science diagnostics, building diagnostics.
These are problematic homes you're walking into.
Oh, absolutely. And
yeah.
And the poor heating guy gets blamed for a lot of things.
No.
But this is looking at it a lot deeper.
Yeah. So I got one more question I got to ask about this. When you're probing the ductwork, right, inside the jacket, trying to find these leaks, I know this video is one thing, and I mocked this up just to kind of show it. But realistically, what does it more look like in the field? Like, does it jump really high when you get to that leak? Like, do you get up to 20 pascals, and over here you're like at 2, and it's like 2 to 20, and you hit a home run? Is that what you normally would see, or does it gradually kind of go up like that, and that's how you've hit like a dominant leak?
The thing is, you won't. I've never seen like a 20 pascal reading, because as probably most of us on this know, the pressure is going to be dependent on how tight the jacket is, how leaky the ductwork is, and how many inches of water or pascals the system is creating at that particular amount of time. But now one thing I want to make clear to the group is, his first test was around 4 pascals, and then I think it was 8. So it doesn't. It's where the dominant leakage is that is going to be the problem, not the supply or the boot closest to the air handler. It could be any place. So, but in that, 3 to 10 pascal, that was a good representation that you showed of how many pascals that we're measuring. So that was a good representation. And some of this might be in an exposed, what we call walk-up attic, or some of it could be our building code today is R50. So you might be literally swimming through the fiberglass trying to find.
But it seems to me like you would deploy this tool to ask yourself, do I need to do a total duct leakage test, right? If, let's say you're trying to ask yourself, should I deploy the duct blaster on this job? Well, if you want to try to quantify that leakage and to see if it's there or not there real fast, turn the HVAC system on, probe the ductwork. If you've got some pressure, you've got some leakage, right? And it's a ratio thing, ratio to how much the duct's leaking and how much the jacket's leaking, like you said. So you can't exactly measure it like that. You know what I'm saying? But you could get an understanding. Well, if you have a problematic home, you could point out that there is duct leakage happening right now.
Right. The whole thing is you can't put a CFM number to that, because people have asked me, well, what are you showing? What I'm showing is a major amount of leakage, and that air is not getting to the conditioned area. And if you're just, say you're the first technician in, or the second technician looking at a cooling problem, and this 2 branches over here, or bedrooms or whatever the case, aren't cooling off as much, then you could do that. And if you find leakage, then that's where that would warrant the time to do a duct blaster test, because then you can find out that those are clues that you might have bigger problems.
Yeah.
Kind of like doing a pressure pan test without having to whip out your blower door.
Well, I wasn't going to say pressure pan yet because I haven't used one in a couple years, but
Okay.
and I didn't know where the group was with that. But it's kind of along that thought process.
It's an indicator. It's not something that's quantifying something.
Right.
Yeah. Or so I like to say now, screening.
Ooh,
Yeah.
screening.
Wow.
I've decided to like call tests that we like to talk about where we can't nail down a perfect answer to. I like to call that a screening now. Like this is a screening and
Right.
something that gives me a definite answer. Well, that's the test, right?
Right.
That's
So we're
two
gonna
new
call-
words I learned today. I learned that. I learned what quiet quitting is today too.
Quiet quitting.
Yeah, it's when you just kind of stop doing your job, but you still get paid. So you just keep doing less and less until you get canned. I thought that was a pretty cool thing to learn.
That's a new one on me.
I think I'll use screening before I'll use quiet quitting, though, at least in real practice.
Ed, what do you think about the screening test, man?
I think it's a great idea. To be blunt about it, I never would have thought about doing it. My equivalent would be there's been a few occasions over the years where it kind of made me giggle. But when the system came on, the foil wrap blew up like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. And when the system shut off, you could hear it sigh and sag back in. And then when it came on again, it puffed back out. And that was obviously there were some issues there, but I never would have thought to do it. And it's something that if I'm in an attic, I'm always going to have my DG8 with me up there. So that's something I would try.
Yeah, it's a pretty neat idea.
Yeah.
But on that point also, on the return side, you're going to see a vacuum effect. But a practice I've seen that I don't condone, and I don't know where other parts of the country are at, but when you get a box of flex, it actually shows you making a joint out of it, taking a piece of tin and making a splice out of it.
Sure.
A common, very quick method is just taking the liner and stuffing it inside of itself. And
who does that?
Yeah, you're laughing, Chris. So
I was young once.
yeah. I mean, there's so many wrong things about that I can't even start to say. But I'm sure that's going on out there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I guarantee it. I got a question in the chat. He said if you suspect duct leakage due to a higher pressure on the manometer at a given location in the vapor barrier, could a smoke pin be used to further pinpoint where it's coming from?
Absolutely. You
could
can make your splice, and I use that, and you shoot the smoke into the jacket, and then it slowly puffs out. It depends on how big a ductwork and what kind of joints you're dealing with.
Mike, do most people, when you go to these jobs, like you identify, let's say it's a trunk line, right? A lot of S-lock and drive ductwork. You've got a long trunk line. You got branch runs coming off of it, right? Then let's just say 3/4 of the way down, somebody just got tired and stopped painting the seams, right, on the S-lock and drives.
Right.
When you would probe that, does the typical job situation for you would be, you find a dominant leak and y'all cut it and then people like paint it, but then you'd have to like tape all that back up to retest, right? Because if you cut the insulation completely off at that spot, then you've lost that vapor jacket, right? Continuing all the way through the duct system. So
but I'm where I see what you're saying. In other words, if you find a dominant leak, cut the vapor barrier open, then you've changed your pressure field effect.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, do most people push you to like try to seal as you go? Or do you try to find a leak, cut open the insulation, identify it and say, look, y'all need to just fix this duct system? Because obviously you're not doing your job. Like if this seam's not painted, The rest of them probably aren't painted, and I'm
Right.
walking away at this point.
Then it's a little stronger conversation. Then he's the technician, because the installer's probably not out with me. He's making a phone call, because then if I start asking the questions of how the rest of this is, then I might say, no, you need to come back. And I recently just had a job like that on a duct blast, where the duct work, the tin work, and the collar was very poorly done. I go, not even going to do the test. I'm going to pass. So you need to fix this. And they had to come out and do some major work to fix it. If it's for a code-driven issue, then there's a solid number that I have to meet. And I don't know what some of the other areas of the country, but we're using 3 CFM per 100 square feet, with no air handler or furnace, and 4 CFM of duct leakage per 100 square feet. So it's not a big number. It's could be, under 25 CFM. You'd be surprised how low that is. So if that's the case, then we need to seal it till we get the duct leakage to pass, or it depends on how close it is.
I got something interesting for you. So me and my dad were at my grandmother's house the other day, and we were doing some case study work because he wanted to help out, and I needed the perfect house to kind of do it on. And my grandmother's house was just perfect in the situation. And we were doing some duct leakage testing, and I'm going to make a video out of this. It's coming, but I'm going to go ahead and let this one out of the bag because it's kind of important for what we're talking about right now. We measured the duct leakage of a return trunk. So just one piece of duct, right? One plenum, and the air handler was attached to the duct. And we had sealed the air handler off. So we were just vacuuming down the air handler and the plenum. And at about 50 pascals of pressure, right, which is double the leakage, but you could see that, right, on an operating system. The duct leakage through the grommets, like where the copper grommets, or with copper goes through the system, you have the grommets that go around the copper, right? We tested with those in, and then we tested with those out. How much leakage you think goes around the copper when the grommets are missing? It was like 18 CFM, which is way more than I thought. But 18 CFM right there is a huge impact on the load of that air conditioner.
Right. Here's one thing I've measured when we're trying to find leaks. A 1/4 inch hole is 1 CFM. That gives you a reference point.
At a specific...
At 25.
Okay. Yeah. Got you.
Which, and everybody probably knows that, but we're talking a 1/10 of an inch at 25 pascals.
So what we're saying out there, if you're listening, is duct leakage matters. And the closer you get to the blower, that's when it matters even more, right? Because that's where your pressure is going to be the greatest.
Right.
I'm good. I think that's where I'm going to close it down for me.
Cool.
Yeah. So I just want to say, Mike, I appreciate you coming on, sharing the knowledge. Glad we got to hear from you. I wanted to show people that method. Like I said, we were train the trainer. Mike showed it to me. The DG8 single channels out, comes with the kit. I'm trying to look for more and more avenues of what people can do with pressure and with that little manometer, because it's a sweet little manometer, right? And just being able to know if you need to get into duct leakage testing more and more right there with that manometer, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a nimble, nice tool, put in your pocket, on the fly.
Yeah. It's crazy how many versatile little action items you can do with this little manometer that are popping up left and right. So it's pretty interesting stuff. So thanks for coming on, Ed. As always, a good time.
Thanks everybody for your time.
Yeah, it's great meeting you, Mike.
Yeah, you too, Ed.
Yeah. All right, guys.
All right, very good.
Until next time.
You bet.
See ya.
Take care.
Thanks, no.